Hey y'all, it's Raj with EV365. Today we're looking at the TesStudio crossbars for the roof. They have some for the bed as well, for the Rivian R1T or the R1S. All right, y'all, here we are looking at the crossbars for the Rivian sold by TesStudio. And those are the ones over here, the black ones. I've got my OEM, these are called Bright, the silver ones that I got when I first got the truck. And these are awesome, but if you've been in the market shopping around for these, you know the ones that Rivian sell are really expensive. These Bright versions for two of them are $700 right now on their webpage. They've got a new blacked out version that sells for $800 on their webpage. So that's pretty expensive for two crossbars. They are awesome though, I do recommend them. So if you want to spend that money, these are great. But if you're looking for a cheaper option, there are third-party ones coming out, and TesStudio is selling these, which I've been pretty happy with trying them out. And they come in this black version, and they sell for about $275 to $299, depending on, I think the roof ones are $275. If you get them for the bed of the truck, they're a little wider, so they're $299. And they've got sales going on all the time. You can get them for 20% off and things like that, which they do have running, I think, at the moment. So just always check their webpage. I'll have the links and stuff in the comments below, and I'll put any coupons down there as well. And the big difference between the ones that TesStudio is selling and the ones that Rivian sells is the TesStudio ones aren't expandable. It's all just kind of one piece. You do screw these two end caps on, but once they're in place, it's one piece. So it is a little easier to manage from that regard, but you lose some of the flexibility. With the Rivian ones, you buy the two rails, they're gonna work on your roof, and they're gonna work on the bed of the truck, or if you've got the R1S, they're gonna work on all three slots on the top, because you can kind of expand and close them. The ones by TesStudio do have a little expandability you see here. You pop these on, they come separated, and then you just slide these on, and there's two screws on each side, and you've got some flexibility there. So I think if you got an R1S, you can use these for the first two slots and the rear slot, which is a little narrower. If you got the R1T, if you get the roof ones, they're only gonna work on the roof. The bed gets a little wider, so there's separate ones for the bed, and that's why those bed ones, like I said, are a little more expensive. And they do sell them for the roof ones separately, like R1T's a separate listing and R1S is a separate listing. Honestly, I think these will work on either vehicle. Because the R1S and the R1T are pretty much identical width-wise, I think, until you get to that third spot. But of course, we're gonna test it out on the R1T today. And these are made out of aluminum, and the ends are plastic. So they may not be as durable as the Rivian ones. I'm actually not sure what all the Rivian ones are made out of. Obviously some aluminum, but these are really heavy. You know, they're light enough to where they're easy enough to manage. But you can see the weight difference. These are very weighty, and these are super light. You can just pick them up like that. I would probably struggle. Yeah, these are much heavier over here to get them up with one. So obviously you're gonna feel a lot more comfortable maybe holding some heavier stuff on here. The Rivian ones are rated to hold 250 pounds while you're in motion. And then if you've got a rooftop tent or something like that and you're parked, they say you can get up to 600 pounds on these. That's without moving. The TesStudio ones are rated for 200 pounds. They didn't really have an in-motion weight, a stationary weight. So the 200's in motion, holding cargo, things like that. Obviously, I think if you've got up the ones for the bed, you could probably get a little more just because you're not getting as much wind hitting them. But then when you're stationary, as far as a rooftop tent, I mean, these are pretty sturdy, but I'm not sure how much weight they'd hold. So if you're planning on getting these to use for like a rooftop tent or something like that, where you're actually going to climb on board, you may just want to kind of test them out a little bit before you do it. I mean, even the Rivian ones get a little bend, but not like these. So yeah, I would maybe just keep these for cargo probably, and not necessarily use them for rooftop tents and things like that. You know, moving a rooftop tent, sure, that's fine. But actually camping in one, you may just want to test that out, or leave it to one person and see if that works. So particularly if you're above the roof with the glass and stuff. But otherwise, these I've been pretty happy with just for cargo hauling and things like that. They're really light, like I said, so they're a lot easier to manage than the Rivian ones. particularly if you're installing on the roof. Like I can just come here, get them across, and not worry about hitting my glass or breaking it. With the Rivian ones, I do need help if I'm mounting them up here. And they do have locking mechanisms just like the Rivian ones. So somebody can't just come and grab them. Now the one big difference, and we'll show you when we climb up, or actually we can just do it from here. The Rivian ones, you know, the beauty of those is you can just kind of unlock them and they pop off, super easy to use. These ones, and they come with 2 sets of keys. So obviously you don't want to lose those. Same thing with the Rivian ones. That's all roof rails that are lockable. These unlock and this plastic cap comes off, and then there's 2 bolts that hold them in place. And it does come with a little hex wrench that you can use. You know, it's kind of like a ratchet bolt. So you can take those off, and it's really easy. There's like a little U-bolt. We'll climb aboard and show you all that. And you take them off, but it's not as quick as the Rivian ones where you can just pop them off, run them to the back or run them to the front or put them away. But they are easy to install. And like I said, it's so light that managing them is super easy. And then of course, a couple of things we want to test is just storage. And let's see if they fit in the tunnel. And of course, they will. If the Rivian ones fit in there, these are going to fit in there just fine. So you can store those in the tunnel, no problem. If you've got the R1T, of course, you can store them in the bed of the truck. And these ones for the roof fit this way in the truck, and they'll fit this way. So again, super light. So we'll bring the camera over here to the bed. We'll take a look up top, and I'll show you how they install. All right, here we are on the roof, and you can see kind of how they look right there. And I think they look pretty good. I mean, the Rivian ones, you know, they kind of have this flare out over here. So let's step down real quick. You can kind of get a closer look. It's kind of how the Rivian ones look, and they're the ones that TesStudio's selling. So you can just see a little different look. I think they're a little more low profile. They're not as high. And I think because of the black, obviously, they blend in a little better, especially when they're on the roof. I think the Rivian ones look great on the bed. Not quite as great on the top, but I think these TesStudio ones do look good. All right, y'all, so here we are. And you see we've got the front rail was already up there. I've already bolted that side of it, so we'll show you how this one works. TesStudio sends you everything you need to do the install. You've got the Allen wrench to tighten those bottom screws. I like to get them on there and then really tighten them up once you've got this part installed so you can get them in the exact right place. So that's what the Allen wrench is for, and it comes with the bolts obviously for that. And then you've got this, you know, the hex bolt driver there, so you can attach the rails to the vehicle. So what you do is it comes with this U-bolt. And I notice all the third-party roof rails, or at least the ones that I've seen, are using this method. They don't yet have the kind of the pop on and off method that the OEM rails come with. I'm sure eventually there will be some like that, but for now this is what you deal with. So there's some extra parts that you need to be aware of when you take the rails off. And they give you this rubber band that you just kind of double loop and put on top. And that's kind of just to hold it in place so it's easy to install. And then you just kind of loop this over, and there's two slots where that bolt will fit through, which you may not be able to see on the camera. But yeah, it's just 2 holes and really easy to fit in there. And then you get your 2 bolts, and it comes with some extra parts as well, of course. Or you get your 2 nuts, I should say. And those just pop right on. Yep. And then you just use your tool to tighten them up. Whoop, lost that one. Yeah, so then you just tighten those up. There we go. Okay. And I'm just going to kind of loosely put them right now. And then you take your cover, and that pops on. And then you lock it, and that's what will lock your rails in place. And so they're secure. So super easy to use. And you can kind of see this is how they look. I think they look great. And again, they're not as strong as what you might get with the OEM ones. So, you know, if you're putting something on there that's maybe pushing 200 plus pounds. Just kind of test it out, be careful. But 200 and below, it definitely shows they're rated for that. So it should be good for, hauling around, luggage and things like that. Again, like I said, with rooftop tents, you may want to test it out. But otherwise, I think they're great looking rails. They're about a third of the price as the OEM ones. So if you're just looking to get some roof rails to haul some stuff around that's not over 200 pounds, this is a good way to go. So if you got any questions, let me know. Oh, one thing I did want to point out, just like with all rails, even the Rivian ones, when you put them on your roof, you do get a little bit more wind noise. Obviously on the back, you don't hear that as much, but that same thing with these. They do look a little more aerodynamic than the Rivian ones, but I was still getting some wind noise with them. But that's common to all the rails, including the OEM ones. So that's not really a knock on these at all. Again, like I said, I think they look great. Honestly, I think they do look better than the Rivian ones. So if you're doing it strictly for aesthetic reasons, these look really good on the roof, and they've got that black look. But yeah, I recommend them. Again, like I said, if you're not hauling around stuff that's greater than 200 pounds. And again, if you want to spend about a third of the money that you'd spend on the OEM rails, it's not a bad way to get started with some roof rails or crossbars for the roof. And like I said, they also have some for the bed of the truck. So if you got any questions, let me know in the comments below. We'll post the links on where you can buy them, and if there's any coupons or discounts, we'll try to update those. And if the one that's in there, if I've got one in there and it's not working, just let me know, and I can always reach out to them and see if there's a current one going on. So thanks for watching. Hang loose, y'all.